Porter versus Errol Spence was probably fight of the year, maybe one of the best fights I've seen in years, and did amazingly at the box office. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Rem Star Says So. All right, man, look. All right, man, look. Let's get into this, guys. Um, Last week, Sean Porter and Errol Spence, they went to war. This was one of the best fights I've ever seen in my entire life. I was up at 4 a.m. watching this fight, and I think I might have watched it probably with one eye open because it was just so bloody late, and I had been out on the piss, and I came back and had about an hour and a half sleep, then to get up and sort of watch this classic fight. So I ended up watching it again in the morning when I woke up after having a few hours skip. What can I say? It was just amazing. One of the best fights I've seen for a very long time. Action from the first round to the last. This was probably one of the closest fights I've seen for a very long time. I think it was apparent that Errol Spence had confirmed the victory when he got an 11th round knockdown when Sean Porter was coming in for a left hook. And I think Errol Spence just beat him to the punch. And everybody knows that Errol Spence, he's known for punching like a mule, or he was. I think Errol Spence recently, though, I think he's gone down in his performances. I think realistically, when you actually look at Errol Spence, since he sacked his strength and conditioning coach, he just hasn't looked the same. He doesn't look as muscular on the scales as he used to, of course, and he always brags and boasts about how he doesn't do strength and conditioning. Now, I don't know how much money his strength and conditioning coach was charging him before, but you would think, boy, you would really think to yourself, for a guy who's earning millions of pounds per fight, you know, like whatever the charge is, he can more than afford it. Like when you really break it down, I believe Errol Spence was paid a minimum £2 million guaranteed, and I think Sean Porter was as well. I'm not sure what the percentage upside splits were, but man, this fight was amazing. Sean Porter showed what a dog he really is. I mean, after this fight, I've got Sean Porter as a firm number three in the welterweight division, possibly scraping number two. I mean, it's plain as day. Errol Spence is the number one welterweight in this division today. I've already said time and time again before that the welterweight division is my favorite division in boxing. But I actually think that Sean Porter could probably beat Bud Crawford. I think the dog in Porter, the fact that Porter's just going to keep coming forwards, he's going to eat leather, he's going to trade with you, and he's going to give you some painful blows. Errol Spence wasn't liking the bodywork that Sean Porter was dishing out. But the fact is, Errol Spence, he's a big puncher himself. What we saw is we saw two kings, two guys probably in their prime or very close to it. I think Errol Spence might be in his prime. Some might argue Sean Porter might be a little bit over the hill. But two kings valiantly fighting it out. Sean Porter, you could argue, has got the better resume. He's been in there with better opposition, but it doesn't matter because Errol Spence was the one who got the win. When you look at the guys that Sean Porter has fought in his career, Ugas, Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Kell Brook, Paulie Malignaggi, I think he might have fought Adrian Broner at some point as well. Sean Porter has just been down there. He's just been doing bits for a very long time. Also, when you look at Sean Porter's amateur record, he's got a win over Usyk in the amateurs. Now, I don't know what weight category Sean Porter was fighting at in the amateur division, but you know, it just shows you when they get him in the ring, Sean Porter looked like the bigger, wider guy, but Errol Spence obviously had the height and the reach advantage. This was a classic fight. And it's no surprise that it's done what it did. 350,000 pay-per-view buys in America. That's a lot of money, bro. That's a lot of money generated. Everybody knows that American pay-per-views are ghastly expensive. And that's a lot of money for these fighters, Al Heyman, and for Fox. That fight generated 26.25 million in pay-per-view revenue. Now, from what my understanding is, when you do pay-per-view, half goes to the network and the other half goes to fighters. So that means that the fight in pay-per-view alone generated 13.125 million. Now, let's say, for example, you take off the 4 million that both fighters were guaranteed anyway, that still leaves an upside of 9.125 million. And I'm sure they both got a healthy sum out of that. I'm sure Al Heyman and the PBC are rubbing their hands together. That is a pay-per-view that's a pay-per-view success. That's back-to-back pay-per-views for Errol Spence. And that's just a big middle finger up to guys like Gennady Golovkin's former trainer Abel Sanchez, who once said that black fighters didn't sell, and that was his excuse for ducking the likes of Charlo and Danny Jacobs at certain times because they wanted to fight easier knockoff opponents. Errol Spence is showing that he's becoming more and more of a pay-per-view draw. I think he did about, how many did he do? Maybe about between 300 and 350 against Danny Garcia, and then 350 again. He's starting to make a lot of money and he's starting to become a major league draw. Al Heyman must be very pleased that he's got another pay-per-view attraction on his hands. What next for these two gladiators? Well, after the fight, I'm sure you all saw Danny Garcia took his ass in the ring, and it looks like he wants to go and challenge Errol Spence. I don't see any reason why Danny Garcia should be getting that fight. He lost the WBC vacant fight to Sean Porter, and in my opinion, he's done nothing since. Danny Garcia needs to go take his ass down and go and fight. I don't know, go and fight Mikey Garcia and go fight Adrian Broner. Do something. He is in no deserve. He does not deserve to be getting no fucking world title shot, if you ask me. If I was Errol Spence, these are the options that Errol Spence needs to do. Go after the Pacquiao fight, go after the Crawford fight, or run the rematch back. Nobody don't want to see no Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia. Fuck that. It's dead. Let Danny Garcia go and earn a title shot. He's a waste man. But yeah, that's my thoughts. It was a great fight. I think with the knockdown, Errol Spence definitely deserved to take the win. I've seen a lot of Sean Porter fanboys coming on the internet recently talking about how they still thought Porter won. I mean, the fight was close, but when you add that knockdown to it, then yeah, you've definitely got to edge it to Spence. Errol Spence is starting to build up a very good dossier of opponents that he's beaten now. He's beaten Sean Porter. He's beaten Lamont Peterson. He's beaten Kell Brook. You know, he's also beaten Chris Algieri. He's got Anfield LaGreco. He's got some good names on his CV now, and that was his 4th title defense since knocking off Kell Brook in May 17. I think as long as Errol Spence can continue to safely make the weight at 147, I generally don't see anybody beating him. The only thing about Errol Spence is that he's a very big guy. I think he's about 5'10" or 5'11", and I stand him 5'9.5" with a 72-inch reach. It must be very difficult getting down to 147 pounds, but he seems to do it time and time and time again. I would like to see Errol Spence mixing it with a 154 lot, but I also want to see him clean out the division first. Manny Pacquiao needs to just man up and come and face this young lion, and Bob Arum needs to stop blocking Terence Crawford. 2 fights for undisputed, and my pick is Errol Spence. I've already made a video about the welterweight division before, and I stand by it. Errol Spence is now the only unified champion at 147. Let's see what he can do. I want Crawford or I want Pacquiao. To be fair, I'd want both of them back to back, but we also know Errol Spence holds the IBF, and the IBF is one of those championships that they demand their mandatories are met at all times. So it's only a matter of time before he's fighting somebody else that nobody wants to see him fight, like when he did in his previous fight. But that's just the nature of the game. You've got to fight your mandatories. That's why he had to fight Carlos Ocampo. Nobody wanted to see that. Nobody cared about that. But the IBF are the IBF. So such is life. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts. What did you think of the fight? Is there anybody in the comments that actually thought that Sean Porter won, even with the knockdown? Leave me a comment, hit like, hit subscribe, and do me a favor and share this video. That's the end of the show because Remstar says so.